folks, this is your Peachy update for the 18th. Well, no hearings today. So, I guess there's that. That means that my job is done. I can turn this thing off and go do something fun now, right? Well, not quite. Okay. I want to bring up a couple of points today that are only indirectly impeachment related. But they are impeachment related in a form, in a fashion, and they have to do with the double standard that we see, which is quite disgusting. Just as an example, we had McCarthy send a nasty letter to ABC threatening the company, basically, wanting to know why the Epstein story was spiked and demanding these answers and, hey, we want the original tapes of the interview and blah, 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 blah. Okay. Folks, who remembers Epstein's bust when the cops raided his little mansion that he has in the middle of New York City? I say little mansion because in mansion terms it is. In terms of New York City, it's not. It's an entire building, which, most people, when they buy something in New York City, they buy an apartment, a piece of a building. Well, no, this was the whole building, worth a lot of money. A lot of property tax, I'm sure, that's getting generated from that. And who knows what will end up happening to that ultimately. I mean, the guy's dead. So now we're talking about his estate, and there's all kinds of games being played there. But when they raided this, one of the things that they found in his safe was a bunch of computer disks, DVDs, and CD-ROMs. And the assumption was that there's a very high probability that there's video on those. Why else would there be this huge stack of, unlabeled things? I'm reasonably sure that's not his music collection. What would I think it would be? Well, maybe it's the video camera logs from Pedo Island and his place down in Florida and, of course, in New York City. Maybe that's what's on them. Why would they be in the safe? Why are they so important? They have to be preserved. The archival records, right? What's on those discs? You notice how there's been no mention of any of that? There's been no talk about it at all. Do you remember that it was the government that spiked the original investigation and gave him a quote-unquote jail sentence when he was able to actually leave jail, go do his quote-unquote work, and while he was doing his quote-unquote work, while he was allegedly quote-unquote incarcerated, there are allegations he had little girls coming over to take care of him then, too. Now, is all this true? I don't know. None of us know. But boy, didn't that come off the headlines awful fast when we started talking about impeachment. McCarthy is all bent out of shape about this with ABC, but you know what? Who owns ABC? Disney. And what has Disney sold for decades? Pictures of cute, underage girls. Hannah Montana, anybody? I'm not saying that anybody was abusing her because apparently that was not taking place, at least as far as anybody knows. But you're telling me there was no sexualization of underage people going on in all of Disney's catalog? And yet, what was the big thing with Epstein? People would have you believe that there was just a couple of people. Now we have Prince Andrew that gave this disastrous interview. Oh my God! You want to talk about cringeworthy nonsense? Was there a message in there regarding the pizza trip? Yeah, I'm going to burn down everyone's house. You guys keep pushing. You keep pushing. I'm going to take everybody down with me. Was that what was in there? Or was it a faux pas? Anybody should be able to run down if they're over there in Britain. There should be some records, right? You don't think a prince actually goes out on his own with no security? Do you really think that happens? So is there some evidence behind any of it? Well, I suppose there probably is. But then would you take your kid to a pizza place, even if you're not a prince, and have that be a part of the evening's festivities? When older people would go out and party and have some fun. Probably not, right? Yeah, okay. Look, that entire interview, you just kind of sat there and go, what were you thinking? And, I don't sweat. Yeah. All the pictures of him, doing a lot of that, right? Yeah. Okay. So, how's this all tied together? Well, it ties together tremendously because we have all sorts of corruption. Donald Trump is braying at the moon about this great policy improvement with healthcare transparency. By God, you're going to be able to get a price. All the hospitals are going to have to publish all this information, and you're going to be able to shop. But my God, it's going to be like Amazon. Prices are going to come way down. Yeah, lost in the noise was the fact that the fine, the penalty, the or else, if you will, in this announcement is $300 a day. So, what's that end up being? About $100,000 a year? So why would a hospital not just put the middle finger up? $100,000. Well, gee, we get that out of one good car accident. You guys got to be kidding me. The people of this country are willing to get distracted and distorted and thrown off. And by God, the rabid left, oh my God, we got to get rid of this president, this terrible president, this terrible president. Yeah. Is this terrible president? Okay. Well, yeah. All right, he's a terrible president. How about Obama? Obama told us that our healthcare costs were going to come down tremendously, as did Nancy Pelosi, as did the entire Democratic caucus, and that didn't happen, did it? How many of them have paid your medical bills? How many of them have gone to jail for lying to you? Has anyone in the Clinton cadre gone to jail for lying about what was going to happen with NAFTA? Remember, NAFTA was the holy grail because after we opened us up with Mexico, in particular, Canada and the United States are fairly close to parity when it comes to their working conditions and everything else. But once we opened up the door to Mexico, by God, the wages in Mexico, which were about $3 an hour at the time, were going to rise dramatically, and they'd probably end up somewhere around $25 per hour. And U.S. wages, they might come down a little bit because at the time they were, you still had a lot of union representation. So maybe the average was at 30 or 32. Yeah, they might come down 25 too. But you know what? You're going to get more hours. There's going to be more people working because all these Mexicans are going to be able to buy these expensive cars. And by God, with if you're making $25 an hour, you could probably afford to buy a GM truck. Well, what actually happened? Well, first off, the price of the truck doubled. And the only way you, the ordinary person, buys one now is on a 7-year loan, which is ludicrous because you end up upside down and then it ends up getting rolled into your new one. And after how many cycles of that occurs before you can't make payments anymore and you go broke? That's the first problem. The second one is the magical $25 an hour wage in Mexico never happened. It's still $3. And so, of course, nobody in Mexico is buying those trucks because they don't have that kind of money. It didn't do anything to advance the middle class in Mexico that would cause that middle class to crowd out all the drug dealers and the gangbangers. Oh, no, the gangbangers are up here in California poisoning the land and growing illegal weed where they don't have to pay any taxes. California, there's nothing they don't love to tax. I know bootleggers don't do things because they don't pay tax, right? No, that never is a motivation to do things that are illegal. Oh, my God. You guys do recall that they catch people with trailerfuls of untaxed cigarettes on a fairly regular basis. Why? Because there's, in those states have crazy high per pack taxes on smokes. In fact, most states have ratcheted those up over the years. And, now the smokes are $5 a pack. Well, how much of that is tax? About $4. And so what have we really accomplished here? We have a so-called impeachment inquiry going on. Meanwhile, real inflation in the things you need to buy, tuition, education, healthcare, property taxes, which I continue to remind you, if you rent, property taxes are in your rent every single month. And they continue to skyrocket. And then on top of that, if that's not good enough, we'll find some other things. How much has internet access gone up in price? Well, sure, speed's gone up too, but the only things that are getting cheaper, laptops and flat screen TVs. How many of them can you eat? How sated will you be if that is your breakfast, lunch, and dinner? That would be 0. I shouldn't have to remind you of this, but I will. Productivity improvement typically runs about 2% a year. That is supposed to mean that it's 2% cheaper in terms of hours worked and requirements to do something this year as it was last year. That's a compound function as well. Over the space of 20 years, it should be about 30% less for you to buy the basic necessities of life. So when you go from 20 to 40, if you make $20,000 a year when you're 20, that should spend like about $26,000 or $27,000 when you're 40. The same wage. You haven't made any more money. But of course, as your skill set goes up, as your ability goes up, you should get a higher wage, right? Along with it. But has that happened? Of course it hasn't happened. And does anybody care? No. Does anybody hold anybody to account for this? No. Does anybody do anything about all this debt being loaded up and Trump screaming about, oh, we need negative interest rates. Oh my God, we got to have another trade deal with China so we can have some more slave labor. Which, by the way, what do you got on your feet? A pair of Nikes? Huh? So, where'd those come from? Those made in China? They were. How about an iPhone? Got an iPhone? Where was that made? China. Huh? All you woke people out there, all you wonderful leftists. Oh man, you cannot say a bad thing about Muslims because if you do, by God, you're a bigot. Huh? Well, the Chinese. The documents that were just released over the weekend that were stolen and leaked, and guess what? They're systematically screwing Muslim people over in China, and recently reported after they take them in and put them in these quote-unquote re-education camps because, you just got to learn to love the Chinese communists. And once you say, yes, comrade, they'll let you out. Until then, nope, in jail you stay. And while you're at it, we're going to send this other Chinese guy who's a very good Communist Party member into your house so he can rape your wife. And that's all okay, according to the woke Americans. Half the country, folks, runs around with an iPhone in their back pocket, and most of them are hardcore leftist Democrats. And, I mean, that's the overrepresentation. And yet, these people, they have no problem with this at all. But God forbid you say one bad thing about somebody pulling out a prayer mat or wrapping their head in a towel. You do that, boy, you are a bigot. Yeah, okay. We'll see. I think, this coming week is going to be very interesting because the witness list for the impeachment hearings is going to include some very interesting individuals. And we are going to hear more and more about how stupid this really is. But at the same time, it's stupid on that side and it's stupid on the other side. So if I've got all stupidity, what the devil am I trying to do? Trying to get ahead? What purpose is there? And if you think that all of this crazy monetary pumping that's going on by the Federal Reserve and the federal government, $1 trillion deficits, as far as the eye can see, $132 billion worth of deficit just in the last month alone. If you think all of this is not going to fold back and produce this really nasty S word sometime in the very near future, you think that real inflation isn't running close to 10% right now? You're out of your mind, especially in the things you have to buy. And hey, you don't buy those. You don't live. I can't eat flat screen TVs. And I certainly can't get a doctor to buy one. Anyway, that's all I got for today, folks. Have an awesome one. And I will be back with you sometime tomorrow.